So I wanted to do a video talking about my earnings for 2025 driving Uber. I'll explain a little bit about what kind of a driver I am and what market I'm in, and then I'll bust into my spreadsheet here and show you kind of some of the numbers based on the weekly reports from Uber. So I'm a veterinary student at a Big Ten university, and I pretty much try to stick to the more on-campus driving, and I just drive on Friday and Saturday nights, usually from 7 or 8 p.m. Um, till 2 to 3 a.m. depending. Sometimes take a little break, go home and get a bite to eat or something, or sometimes if I start earlier, I'll quit earlier. Just kind of depends. And most of my rides are college students. Kind of doing the things that they do on Friday and Saturday nights, which I'm sure everybody knows what that is. Um, I'm driving. I guess I should explain why I started driving. Um, so I had, before I got into vet school, my girlfriend and I had decided to lease an EV. So I drive a 2023 Subaru Solterra. At the time, my girlfriend was commuting like around 100 miles per day. And I got the lease for 12,000 miles a year. And then once we moved down here, her job is like 2 miles away from the house. So the amount of usage on the car went down a lot. And EVs are tanking in value so much that like having extra miles at the end doesn't make you have positive equity. Like if you had a Prius or like a RAV4 that had extra miles at the end, it'd probably be worth even more. And you could get that money out of it as equity at the end. But in this case, I know that the vehicle's effectively worthless to me when I turn it in. So I was like thinking, well, I'll drive Uber to eat up some of the miles, which I'll talk about the cost too, because to me, the cost of the lease is really, it's a sunk cost. And car insurances as well. We're going to be paying for those regardless. And I'm going to get nowhere close to my 36,000 miles. I might get close now with Uber. I've got until October of this year when the car will get turned back in. And right now I'm at like 24,000 miles, I think, or something like that. Um, so really my cost, if you will, is really just my fuel cost, which I'll go over later. Um, but basically, the reason I started looking at this was because I was kind of curious. I was on a couple different Reddit subreddits for Uber drivers and talking to some people, and I was curious. Everybody always posts on there what their percent earnings are, and I started thinking about, because I could look and see that mine were somewhere between 55 to 65% usually, and some people are like, mine are way lower and this and that, and I kind of realized that driving during a busier time, I can be a little more picky, and that's probably what's driving up my percent. The way I evaluate the quality of a ride is just pretty much looking at. I don't look at distance hardly at all. I really just look at the time to complete the ride and then the area in town where it's taking me, because all my trips are so short. I mean, I don't even know if I have average. I didn't calculate. I could calculate maybe average miles per trip, but I didn't. But it's got to be low. I think I did calculate it. I commented on Levi. This is he. So tip you in the app on YouTube. This is kind of I watch his videos and make some comments, and that was part of what I was kind of piqued my interest in trying to calculate this out. I commented on one of his videos what my average trip was. I think it was like 5 mile, less than 5 miles or something, and because his was like 15 miles, so I was like, wow, it's a big difference. Um, but the two things that stuck out in my mind was um, if there was a correlation between earning percentage and then dollars per hour, which there's kind of a weak correlation, I guess. I mean, the R value on this linear regression is only 0.35, so not very good. Now, if you exclude these outliers, maybe it gets a little better. You can tell there's a correlation if, think of it whichever way you want. I don't really know which one's the dependent variable and which one's the independent, but if you're making more per hour, your earning percent is higher, or more likely the other way around is if you're taking rides that have a higher earning percent, you're making more per hour. The other one I was curious about was looking at dollars per hour as a function of trips per hour. And this one, I think, I mean, this one $50 a day, which was probably like that I got some promotion, because I was for a while last year getting like $200 if I completed 100 trips in an EV or something like that in a month. I think it was every month if I completed 100 trips, I got $200, something like that. Um, and then more recently into the new year, I've started to get a couple of quests, one of which was do 20 rides, get $200 over a weekend. That was awesome. Now I've had a lot of the $2 per ride for like 10 rides, so like a $20 bonus on a Friday night and a $20 bonus on a Saturday night, which is nice. But anyway, this one, I mean, R value is still only 0.58, but this is really, well correlated. And that makes sense, especially in my market. And knowing the way that Uber, bills the ride with the kind of like a base fee and then a dollars per to book the ride basically, and then a dollars per mile and dollars per minute type of a function. So obviously, if on the days when I was running more the weeks, because this is all by week, unfortunately, you can't break it down by day or trip, but or by hour. But on the weeks when I was running more trips per hour, I had higher earnings. And some of these are probably dragged down pretty far by, I drove a little bit during the summer, which was just people to and from work and stuff like that, and whatever people do during the summer. I don't in a college town, not a whole lot. So that may maybe drive some stuff down. But I drove from April. I started in April, so my first week was the week of April 21st. My last week on here was December 22nd. This might be a little bit thrown off by the fact that it doesn't include New Year's Eve, which was a decently big night, but I did my revenue based on what's calculated here, not like my yearly statement from Uber. So that's a slightly different. So the kind of the data they put into here was the week, and then I have the percent earnings, the time that I drove, number of trips, gross revenue. That would be gross revenue. Was it including tips? Now I'm not going to be able to remember. Let's see how I calculated this. Over G. Okay, so that's just gross revenue including tips. This was the amount of tips, and then I calculated that out as dollars per hour, trips per hour, average tip as a dollar per trip is the unit there, and then tip percent. And the tip percent is not the percentage of gross revenue, but the percentage of like the fare. So that's why I separate it out. So the denominator is revenue minus tips, I think, right? Revenue minus tips, and then tips over. So I wanted to calculate it like thinking like a server, like 20% or whatever. So you'll see that varies widely. In my experience, to be honest, is that I run a lot of trips with no tip, and then I run a few trips with fairly large tips. And it all kind of averages out. I mean, over the course of the year, it averaged out to just under $1 per trip. And that's with a lot of stiffs. So that really shows, like, this is just my intuition, but like, it's not that I'm getting $1 per trip. I'm getting like $0 on 4 trips and then $5 on 1 trip, that kind of a deal. And then my tip percent, for the whole year, the average was 13.36. And this is truly calculated. This is not, so this is not just averaging these. That's how I did it at first. But this is actually that I summed up all the tips, summed up all the revenue for the whole year, and then calculated that. I'd love to know what yours is, if it's higher or lower. Hopefully higher than that. I don't think that's very good at all. So gross revenue per hour was 30.1, which, again, this is all based on active time. This is just using the stats that Uber had. So a little bit of downtime. I don't commute very far. 5 minutes to start driving. Sometimes I just turn it on at my house. Usually I drive towards campus. Average 3.6 trips per hour, which intuitively I felt like I ran more. I feel like I run more like 5. So maybe that gets drugged down. I mean, a lot of these are over 4. There's a good percentage that are over 4 trips an hour. So it could be that maybe I am sometimes running 5 trips an hour, but I feel like that's what makes my money, is the fact that I'm pretty selective about my trips. The way that I choose trips is based on I look at the time, and then I try to shoot for that 50 cents a minute to get to $30 an hour, and evidently I did that pretty well. Obviously, when it's surging, I'm making a lot more than that, and I do take some trips for lower than that. Um, but my percent earnings averaged over the whole year was 62.875, which I think is a pretty good number. I feel like anecdotally online, I've seen people complaining that theirs is a lot lower, like 50 or less than 50%. And I think a lot of that has to do with ride selection. If you take anything that's offered to you, it's going to be lower because basically what I found is that when you're surging, that drives that up pretty significantly. Um, the other thing I'd be curious to know how it works exactly, and some of you might know, is like I've definitely taken trips. I ran one the other night, and then I had one. It was on, I believe it was on October 31st. It was Halloween night, big night on campus, being a Friday night this year. I had one trip. It was like there was a surge, and I just drove like a quarter of a mile to get into that zone. It was a $30 an hour, a $30 surge, and I ran a trip that was not even a mile. I think it was like one, maybe it was like 1.04. The trip itself took like 3 minutes, and it was like I made $37. There's no way that that person paid more than 37. I just refuse to believe that they would have taken that trip. So I'd love to know how it works. I'm assuming that Uber just eats the cost on that. If you get that little thing at the bottom that says you're guaranteed next surge, regardless of what trip they give you, I'm assuming that they're paying for that because I just cannot believe that that person would have paid. Even if I would have gotten paid 100% of the thing of the revenue of the fare, I guess. There's no way they paid $37, and I'm pretty sure they tipped me $2 too. I guarantee they would not have tipped me if they had paid $37 for that ride. They probably just wouldn't have taken it. I wouldn't have, but I'm cheap. Um, I guess on average I was driving 11 hours a week, so I guess my time is not 8 to 3 is not accurate. Um, but that is time online, so there's some I don't know, and maybe I didn't drive. I didn't drive like every single. Oh, and over the summer, yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, I'm trying to look. A lot of these during the school year. Yeah, 30 hour. This is probably more accurate. I was driving between 10 to 20 hours a week. I don't know. Whatever. $380 for the whole year. 1,370 trips. So I'm not. I mean, I'm a part-time driver. Um, this is not. This is just a supplemental income for me while I'm in school. And then my gross revenue was $11,455, and this was my gross tips, $1,350, no tax on tips. That came in. Um, it actually didn't really affect me very much. My girlfriend's a bartender and server, and it was huge for her. She had um, zero federal tax liability. It's crazy. First time I think ever as a server she's gotten money back on her tax return. A nice little bonus we weren't expecting. Um, yeah, and then I looked at my costs. So first of all, this is the active miles that Uber gave me. So I know I ran more than that because there's certain times when I was technically driving for Uber but didn't have the app turned on if I was moving around or whatever. Um, so then my revenue dollars per mile wise was 1.5, and I know that's the way a lot of guys will kind of evaluate trips as more dollars per mile. I think that's better if you're running longer trips. I think going with a dollar per hour thing is better if you run short trips, but maybe that's just the way I do it. I don't know. My fuel cost. Now this is overestimating fairly drastically because I just went back for my EV charger at my house, and I charged one time at a public charging, and then over at the vet school there's there's a free level 2 that the longest I've ever been plugged into was like an hour. So I maybe got 5 kilowatts off of it or 6 kilowatts. So hardly anything. But anyways, this was the fuel. This was the electric cost for my charger at my house for that whole time period. But some of the miles that were put on the car were not driving Uber. It was my girlfriend going to work or us driving around or whatever. So this is overestimating. I just divided by this 7618, and that came out. And I thought that it should be like 3.5, 4 cents a mile. So this being 6 cents a mile, that makes sense. And I have to have electricity at my house anyways. So the service charge doesn't. I mean, it's a sunk cost anyways. Really, I should be looking at the marginal cost, but that's fine. And then I just wanted to see, if I was if I was like truly leasing a vehicle to do this, what would I be paying? And basically, I just took my monthly lease cost, which is $457, which in hindsight, man, those cars, there's people with much better deals than me. At the time, it was a great deal. Um, it was the less than 1%, whatever it is, 1% or 10% of MSRP, whatever. MSRP on a car is was like $50,000 for that year or something like that. So it's a decent price, $457 a month for 12,000 miles. And then my insurance cost, I just did. These per mile are just basically the monthly cost divided by 1,000 because it's 1,000 miles per month. So my insurance cost for that, which it's not a per mile cost. It doesn't matter how many miles you drive, but I just calculate it that way for my own sake. 14 cents. So my total cost there it's 66.6 cents, which is lower than the IRS 70 cents. So that's good, I guess. Not that it really matters. But man, if you were doing this in a car that you owned, or if you got a better deal I just don't think leasing makes sense for driving Uber. Um, but like if you bought a Prius or something like that, you could get your cost per mile way lower than that, especially if you depreciate the car over 200,000 miles or whatever. Um, yeah. So that's high cost. Very low fuel cost. And like I said before, to me really, and that's why I have this in green, that is my cost. I mean, the lease cost and the insurance cost are sunk costs. I mean, minus you're paying more to have rideshare a little bit, $10 a month more. But um I'm paying for that regardless. So to me, I calculated out basically my fuel cost for the whole year for driving that many miles was $485. So my profit, if you will, if you want to do my accounting method of only charging myself for fuel, meant that I made $10,969, and my profit per hour was 28.82. 83, whatever. $29 an hour. That's good. That's really good, especially in my area. I mean, there's not a job. I mean, maybe if you got a serving or bartending job where they let you only work Friday and Saturday nights, you could probably maybe make that much. Um, I mean, my alternative would probably be like being a bouncer at one of the clubs, and I know I wouldn't make that much doing that. And having the freedom for me is what really makes, if I have a big exam coming up or I don't want to, just have something going on, just don't drive. Um, and I am flexible because I'm not relying on this, like as the only source of income and like full-time job where if there's just absolutely no surges and it's dead, I just won't drive. Um, and then what I calculated over here was like, even if we want to do true costs with a leased car, very expensive way to drive Uber, still at almost $17 an hour, which in my area is on par with probably higher than working at McDonald's. I don't know. I mean, minimum wage in my state is federal minimum wage, $7.25. I feel like most entry-level retail type jobs like McDonald's or something like that are $12 to $13 an hour. I feel like $15 an hour is kind of like the unofficial kind of like living wage, I guess. But yeah, and then if you want to look at it according to the IRS, at the 70 cents a mile, I would have made $16 an hour. So whatever. I mean, I choose to pretend that I make $28 an hour. I don't really, but that's okay. We all have our costs. Oh, here's the breakdown of how much fuel I used, electricity I used. And I got pretty cheap. I think that this is cheap. 17 cents a kilowatt, I think is pretty cheap. It'd be cheaper if I had like off-peak charging or something, but it's just, I get no incentives for having the EV from my electric company, and I get no decreased rate for charging at night, even though we have smart meters, so they could easily do that, but they've chosen not to. So anyway, yeah, that's my breakdown for the year. Super happy with it. There was definitely a learning curve. I'm just a very analytical type person. I mean, I studied industrial engineering for my undergrad, so I'm very at home in a spreadsheet like this. And I really my goal was to be a good Uber driver, to be an efficient Uber driver, and it definitely took me a little while to figure it out. But once I figured out my market, I mean, I feel like I'm a very efficient and good Uber driver. Um, and that's aside from the whole kind of like social aspect of it. I don't know. I'm an introvert, but I actually really enjoy like the conversing with people when they're willing to have a conversation. And I've met some really cool people. Um, but aside from that, like in terms of just knowing what rides to accept, knowing where the busy spots are in my town, knowing the times to go out, just building up that intuition. And that's the biggest thing that I think I'll see people post on Reddit like, this is my first week. How did I do? And it's like, well, you got a huge incentive, so it made it look like you did a lot better. But like, it just takes time to build that intuition for what ride is worth accepting or not. And if you're in a less busy market, or you're driving, if you're driving 40 to 60 hours a week, it's not going to be surging all the time. And so then you are a little more, you don't have as much of a choice in that case. And that's where like choosing, if you can afford to, choosing to drive when they need you is obviously going to work out better for you because you're going to make more money. Um, but yeah, that was just my breakdown. I wanted to see, and of course I didn't owe. Well, I owed a little bit. I did a summer research project, and then I was a counselor for the like a vet camp we do at our school for high school students. So I made some money there, but overall, and that had taxes deducted. But I only owed $90 or something federal and $80 to the state. And I don't really know if that was from Uber, or I guess I probably just would have gotten a refund um, from those other jobs, but they covered the tax on this, so I have no complaints. We'll see how I do this year. I don't know. I think I've already run. I don't know. Let's look. Let's see how many trips I've run. I probably should have showed my stats. I'll show those on the screen too when I introduced myself, I guess. Let's see. 4.99 rating. I've been at 4.98 for a long time. I always get a couple 1 stars. I think it's people that want to. Okay, I've ran a lot of trips. I'm at 16.99. So 16.99 minus 13.70. Let's see how many. 16.99 minus 13.70. 329 trips this year. And we've divided by 8 weeks, maybe 41 trips. Yeah, that sounds about right. Definitely, I had some time when I was running more than that, but yeah. So, just wanted to make this video. If you have some comments, let me know. Um, I don't have time right now, but I would be curious to kind of crunch some numbers with some other people's info, this same kind of thing from their weekly reports, and see specifically like, I want to the kind of the science brain in me wants to figure out, what is driving, what are the independent variables and what are the dependent variables, um, and it seems like if you can run more trips per hour, that's the biggest thing I think. Shorter trips, and running more trips per hour. But maybe for you guys, like Levi's talked about it, like his bread and butter is longer trips, so with the possibility of a tip. So I don't know. Um, and I can't put my finger on. I feel like I made a YouTube short about this before, but like if everybody actually just tipped $1, I'm sure my tips, even though my average tips were $1 per trip, like if everyone tipped at least $1, oh my God, I would have made so much more money. And like that's nothing to the rider. $1, unless you're taking 5 Ubers a day, I don't see how that will ever add up. Especially for the college students that are taking like 2 to 4 Ubers a week. Like you can afford $4. Come on, especially when it's on your parents' credit card. I'm a little cynical, but I can't complain. It's their right to tip or not. I know that I provide a good service. My car is always clean. I drive well. I go off the vibe of the people. If they want to talk or not. So yeah, I don't know. And I get compliments about that kind of stuff, but it doesn't always translate to tips. So I don't know how I can do better. If you have comments about that, I'd be open to hearing your suggestions. Thanks for watching.